it's great you are talking about the great experience of being accepted into a space like that and teaching in a space like that and all the incredible magic that you were doing there. Then what happened?
So I made history, So I'm a history maker, and I write history and I envision the future. But I think getting into that program, the PhD program,
Sure.
so I became, at least in that school I was at, the Staley School of Leadership Studies of Kansas State University, I became the first ever African to teach
Sure.
in the Staley School of Leadership of the first operational land-grant university of American people. There has never been any African who held that role that I was in America. So you could, being the first and the only, I mean, it's a very complex space to find yourself because you're breaking the glass ceiling. You don't know who to ask questions because you are the first in that space and context. I'm looking for someone who has had that kind of experience, even at a different location, to say, how was it? Because for me, I had to experience it myself, and there was no one to ask questions, at least at that level that my life was unfolding.
Sure.
The people I know went to abroad to study.
Yeah.
They were not
Teaching.
in authority role of teaching. Do you hear what I'm saying? So me, I had to now navigate something that I wasn't familiar with, right?
Yeah.
But I experienced that transition because it also stretched me because I had to learn so much at a short space of time and grapple with a whole lot of things, being a student full-time, a lecturer full-time, and an advisor full-time. So, and I think even the culture of America, it's something else. They work hard.
Very competitive.
Very competitive, and I had time and space also to push myself.
Sure.
And I experienced accelerated growth in a short space of time. I was stretched, and it was time.
Yeah.
So I became like an intellectual monster at that period. I could realize, but I also realized how great Wits University is because it prepared me.
It prepared
when I was
you
there,
for that, yeah.
I was dealing with people intellectually in spaces that allow. Do you hear what I'm saying? In where we had to debate.
Sure.
I will rip people apart.
Yeah.
And some were even older than my parents. And I think that's where most problems started because I also have a spirit of activism in me.
Sure.
So I even found myself in a very wide dominated space.
Yeah.
That is not open for change, right? And for me, I wanted change. When I was in South Africa, even now, change is what I want to see.
And you left at a time where I think universities were very much politicized.
Yes.
During the time of the Fizz Must Fall, and I think a lot of spirit of activism was imparted during that time. And I can imagine what it was like for you getting there in 2018, and being in a space like that.
Yes, I mean, so all those ideas of throughout my vet time, I've always found myself in. My degree is geography, archaeology, and environmental sciences, which is like science. But I found myself in spaces of humanities, like politics. Scientists don't normally see themselves as people who participate in politics and or other social or human-related things. They want to be in the labs. That's
wearing white coats.
Yes, things that I didn't. I grew into those things because I also said I want to influence society in some shape or form. So by virtue of being there, I started to learn politics. I started to learn consciousness, ideas of black consciousness.
Sure.
I started to be influenced by Paulo Freire, Steve Biko, Robert Mangaliso, Sobukwe, Kamben Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara. I started to breathe these ideas, and they started to shape my ways of being and thinking, right?
Sure.
And then once you cross that bridge, I think there's no going back. Like do you hear what I'm saying?
Gone.
It's you know what injustice is, and you don't want to sit on the side when in the face of injustice. But much more so, especially if you could also find yourself in the receiving end of that injustice.
Sure.
So that's why even today I do the kind of work that I do, engaging young people and ensuring that they get access to higher education and succeed there and eventually break the cycle of poverty and fight inequalities. It's because of that. So that is who I am. I find myself as an activist, and I'm not regretting. I will do everything humanly possible to be who I am.
Sure.
And it comes with costs.
Yeah.
It comes with costs of being an engaged human being. In the US, one of the things we used to identify ourselves in the academies, we are publicly engaged scholars. So our work is not just to sit in files.
Sure.
It must find traction in the ground. It must influence the ground, and the ground must influence it.
Sure.
Do you hear what I'm saying?
Sure.
So for me, even when I'm in the class, when we're speaking about ideas of decolonization, in America, I will speak my language. Kirna tuto yaka iswanje ifetule batho ba ga masemola.
Yeah. Sure.
Do you hear? And I was doing that in America, and people would be electrocuted shock. Because, like, what madness is this?
Sure.
Because I will then tell them that one of the influencers, Ngungu Wationgo, who writes the book Decolonizing the Mind, says language is the carrier of culture. So by speaking in English, you and I here advancing the colonial culture.
Sure.
But by the time we get to Rebulele Maleme ya borena, like our languages, ke bolele Sepedi, o bolele Suzulu, ola bolele Chivenda, Ari Muranga, Panda, Waduba, Naduba, Wazino, Namachero. We are enriching and advancing our languages.
Yeah.
And so me, I am a pragmatic genius. So when I give you an example, you must hear it or see it.
Sure.
So I was doing, and they're like, but you can't speak these things in America. You must do these things. And I'm like, no, this is who I am. So you are saying, by virtue of being, I must completely reject myself for who I am.
Sure.
So it was very exciting. And then so these ideas then started to make me be an enemy of some people who were not receptive to ideas of change,
Yeah.
And some people would say, when Mafule, you are blurring the lines between an activist and a researcher and you do hear what I'm saying?
But those lines have always been blurry, in so many ways.
Yes, they were saying like, you are taking it too far. How can you speak your home language even in an American university?
Sure.
I'm like, where does it stop and where does it end? Like, who gives that mandate to say you don't get to do it at this level here? Do you hear what I'm saying?
Sure.
And for me, I'm glad that my children will know that I fought for something, I stood for something, and I did it at the most unimaginable place in the world,